Okay, race and ethnic people, this is a mini lecture on the topic of meritocracy, which I had overlooked until at the end of the last lecture I uttered the term privilege. And I have to get back to that because meritocracy and privilege are really important concepts for us. In any course of mine, the term privilege should mean unearned advantages. That's what privilege is for us, unearned advantages. Um, to understand how many of our advantages members of the majority group enjoy, to understand how those are unearned, many of them, you have to understand another concept known as meritocracy. Literally, the term meritocracy means rule by those with merit, those who have earned it. And of course, the idea then is in America or another society that would consider itself meritocratic, you earn what you get and you get what you earn. So that the people who are more successful just competed better in an open competition where everyone had basically the same chance to succeed. Okay? Now, to understand how far away we are from that, and really America might get closer to that ideal than most other societies, but we're a long, long ways from it. You need to understand two really important facts, at least I consider them facts. The first is that a variety of scientific disciplines, led perhaps by my own sociology, have been trying to find racial differences and gender differences in ability, in intelligence, creativity, ambition, that sort of thing, for over 100 years. And they found virtually none. Okay? Let me state that again. Fact one, as I want you to consider them, is that a whole variety of disciplines have been trying to compare races and compare men to women to find differences in abilities, mostly cognitive abilities. And they've been doing that for 100 years. They have found virtually none. We have very small differences, men and women, in things like verbal reasoning, where women have a small advantage, and in spatial acuity, where men have a very small advantage. Most of you have taken the ACT or the SAT. When you fold up those little boxes on the exam, that's what it's measuring. Okay, and please understand these differences are very, very small. Okay, they're statistically significant, meaning only that they're large enough not to have occurred by chance, the way the research is done, but they're very small differences. Okay, where race is concerned, there's virtually no differences whatsoever that anybody's been able to definitively, conclusively, even really arguably demonstrate. Okay, so we have to start in this course, and for now, please take my word for it. If you are wondering about it, please read up on it. But for now, please accept there are no differences in the intelligence, the ambition, the creativity, the resilience, the determination of various races, nor between men and women. Okay, that's sort of fact one. Okay, fact two is we see tremendous differences in the outcomes of men and women, the outcomes of different races in life in America. Okay. Now, there are a zillion ways to try to measure differences in outcomes. I think the most basic one, the one that's most easily understood, is poverty. And if you look at poverty figures, you find that most people of color in America, with a couple of really important exceptions that we'll take a look at later in the course, most people of color in America have poverty rates that are 2 to 3 times the poverty rate of white people. Okay, so that blacks have about 2.5 times the poverty rate of whites. Latinos roughly similar. Native Americans 3 times the poverty rate of whites. And you can go right on down the line and see those differences virtually everywhere. The only group, Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, Jewish Americans, Cuban Americans, interestingly enough, All pretty narrowly defined groups have poverty rates roughly equal or a little bit greater than whites. Okay, and if you look at gender, what you find is that women are almost 2 times more likely to be poor in America than men are, okay, across racial groups. That is, if you want to measure, if you want to compare the genders for poverty, you have to look at adults, because kids' poverty is a function of their parents' poverty for the most part. And if you look at the adult poor, you find that almost, not quite, but almost 2/3 of adult poor people in America are women. Okay? Now, put those two facts together under the sort of overarching banner of meritocracy. Okay? Meritocracy, again, meaning that the people who deserve to succeed are the ones who actually do. Okay? And the only way that we can know who deserves to succeed is if everybody gets the same opportunity, right? You know, you're already learning my political stripes, so this won't shock you. There's an old joke by columnist Molly Ivins, who died a couple years ago, unfortunately. But she was kind of a thorn in the side of George W. Bush. She used to say of George W. That Bush was born on third base, but he thought he hit a triple. Okay, to sort of get across the point that W didn't understand how privileged he was. Okay, nor do many Americans, as you know, I believe. Okay, so if you have a society where the races are virtually identical in terms of their ability, as are men and women, but you have outcomes, right, on the other end of life, let's say, that are very, very unequal. How do you explain that in a meritocracy? If people are equal in ability, but they're ending up in very, very different places, that's really hard to explain. You know, in terms of sort of who deserves their success. Okay, so if you've got poor people, if you've got various groups that are much, much more likely to be poor than are the majority groups, then you've really got two explanations for that. Number one is, well, golly, I guess women, I guess people of color just can't hack it. They're just not good enough. Again, a century of research says differently. Okay. The other obvious explanation is, well, then I guess they didn't have the same opportunity. Okay? And that's what, over a period of weeks, I think most of the research that you'll look at in this course will show. Okay? Now, there's lots more that flows from this, and there's certainly argument to be had on this. I think for those of you who haven't heard it before, okay, inside the social sciences, this is pretty well understood.